Well, hello. We get to meet again. Yes, I have a mask, and so do most of the other people I get to see around our community. That coronavirus is still having its effect on all of us. Numbers of those who have been diagnosed with carrying the virus continue to be on the increase. So I hope in this presentation we find you healthy and doing well, as we are going to deal today in this teaching time with issues that truly do affect our country, citizenship. For this video presentation will be posted on our 4th of July weekend, and it's actually going to be posted on July 5th, 2020. I am Gregory, and I have the privilege of serving in Medford, Oregon as a senior pastor of the Medford Neighborhood Church. Well, let me take you on a bit of a journey that involves some immediate thoughts of what's going on in our culture. For about the last month now, our major cities in America have been having all types of protests going on, as we're finding that there tends to be a younger generation who are very unhappy with their circumstances, at least members of our younger generation. Yes, as a result of a terrible crime that took place where a police officer dealt with a person that was to be arrested in an improper way, and that person's life was taken and was lost. We're terrible to hear that, but that has given excuse for many people to take to the streets and, well, not be peaceful. I have heard it being said on our news, it depends which news stations you listen to, that some will call what's going on peaceful protests. And yet, their very film that they show, when people are yelling profanities and carrying signs that are filled with cuss words and threats, I don't see how you can call that peaceful. And when cities have buildings that were erupted in fire and flame, and just property was destroyed and looted. Well, let me say this to any person who would be observing this. If you lie, if you cheat, if you steal, if you take other people's property and damage it, there is no good reason for that, and that makes you a liar, a thief, a destroyer, a villain. No matter what the cause is, there's no cause where you get to go and hurt those who are innocent. Okay, that's what we're all looking at across America today as we approach our 4th of July weekend. Again, when this is presented, we're in the middle of it. So let me take you on a journey with some thoughts. Do you know what our national motto is for this country? Yes, our national motto. I did some research on this, and I found it interesting. First of all, in the 1700s, shortly after the celebration, what we call the 4th of July, and the Declaration of Independence in 1776, shortly thereafter, our national motto was E pluribus unum. Yes, E pluribus unum, which means one from many parts. One from many parts. Now, how you interpret that today is probably strikingly different than our founding fathers interpreted it. I've noticed that a lot of our younger generation truly missed their educational development when it comes to American history. And in fact, I know this as a fact, since I work in school systems and I'm around school systems, many of our schools today have rewritten American history. They've refused in some of our textbooks to put in the words from actually our founding fathers' diaries. Now, you know, a diary is a pretty personal book where people write their most true and intimate thoughts of their heart. And those words from our founding fathers' diaries have been taken out of our textbooks. No wonder it's easy to say, let's get rid of George Washington. He must have been an evil man. When his diary reflects he was a man of prayer and a man of faith. And maybe he didn't follow everybody else's religions and stuff, but we find nothing in his record that he was a man who lacked good character, even though he was in a culture that did have slavery. Slavery is a terrible structure, and it wasn't established or started in America. Slavery has gone all through human history. In fact, There are those who chose to become slaves in many culture. They called them bondservants in the Bible, and those were people who just couldn't make ends meet, and they didn't have a way of establishing protection for their life, so they would purposely subject themselves to a landowner or a baron or somebody who had wealth, and they would become a bondservant to them, and their master would take good care of them. For those of us who call ourselves Christians, we should be familiar with, there is a type of bondservanting or bondservanthood. I purposely have declared, Jesus is my master. Yeah, did you do that, Christian? Is Jesus your master? Well, let me go back to this concept, because who's our master is going to be interesting. It's part of our national motto. Our national motto said, E pluribus unum would be our national motto in the 1700s. But I found this really interesting. It wasn't until 1956, 1 year before I was born. In 1956, the 84th Congress of the United States voted in and passed without debate, and it was unanimous between both parties, that our national motto would become, In God We Trust. Now, like in all cultures, there are some people who absolutely don't believe in God. Well, they were outvoted. They were considered, and by the way, since 1956 to today, those who are anti-God, who call themselves educated atheists and they think they're knowledgeable, well, they have knowledge. A lot of people have knowledge. The Bible says in the latter days, knowledge will abound, but along with it, so would be foolishness. The Bible says you've been fooled if you don't know there's a creator. Well, that's another topic. I want to take us on this journey. In the 1700s, our national motto was what? E pluribus unum, which means one from many parts. And in the days that this started, we had numerous colonies that had people from different areas of Europe that immigrated to the colonies, and they were the many parts. It was the colonies. But I'll tell you what they weren't many in. They had basic values that they agreed on. They believed that lying was wrong. I've already alluded to this. They believed that cheating was wrong. They believed that to murder was wrong. They believed to steal. So what's going on in our streets of America today? There's actually a liberal group that would want us to go back to the original national motto and would say, E pluribus unum, and one we are, with many we will be one. But there's some things that are incompatible. Sorry for an interruption. We had to take care of some sound problems. Now, E pluribus unum was our nation's first national motto. Again, it means from many parts we become one, or one from many. Now, in those days when that was established, the culture was not very diverse when it came to its values, morality, ethical behaviors. No matter where the culture came from, they believed lying, cheating, stealing, violence against your neighbor, violence, murder, mayhem, that was wrong. I wonder how we change today when we see so much of that in the streets today. In fact, all those who have been doing the damage and tearing monuments down, and they have an inaccurate view of history, I wonder what they're going to replace the things they tore down with. They've done a good job at marring our monuments and desecrating and writing and pouring fluids and paint, and they've done a good job at making the mess. What will they clean up? Yeah, I think every citizen should wonder about that. In our city of Seattle this last week, finally the police came in and took over and took back the 6 blocks that were taken by protesters in the street. And what were they protesting? Well, it depends who you ask. Most of them could not give even a rational explanation of what they were protesting. And I'm talking about those who did the violence, those who did the destruction. And a citizen was approached after the police came and retook and reestablished their presence in that part of Seattle. The police came through and a citizen was asked, how do you feel now? Are you glad the police came? And I won't forget what that citizen said, because I'm a pastor, I'm a kind-hearted person. I want to express love and grace to others. But that citizen said, what took the police so long? It's been 4 weeks. They should have been here 4 weeks ago and stopped the mob. Yes, 4th of July weekend. Some people want the freedom to hurt others, no matter how you deal with it. Some of our political leaders have this capability of not discerning that they'll make decisions that in the long term end up hurting others. The streets of our land in this beautiful state of Oregon, the streets continue to be filled with more and more acts of violence, acts of behaviors from addictions. Let's see what the Bible has to say. And by the way, I want to let you know, Jesus was a political activist. But he didn't just work on the surface with one form of government. He worked in the depths of the hearts. Because Jesus is the one who actually brings the message. It's every individual's heart. Everyone's heart is where life or death grows from. Jesus himself said, first cleanse the inside of the cup, and then the outside would be clean. Just want you to know, Jesus goes to the heart of the matter. I hope we do too today. Well, just a little background too. So, E pluribus unum, it's Latin, was our first motto. But it was in 1956, as I said earlier, that our national motto was voted by both sides of the Senate and the independents. It was unanimous vote to have our national motto become, "In God We Trust." What a statement. In God we trust. See, America had already gone through so many different challenges and battles and divisions. Some of our grandparents today, they recognize we better go back to some of the values that we found, not just in our Bibles, we found from the Creator, who created all people equal. We're going to be held by His justice one day, and you don't need to worry. It will be fair, it will be just, and He has all the evidence. It will be accurate. So, here's what the Scriptures had to say that I would like to call to your attention. Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13 has been a chapter in our Bibles. It was written by the Apostle Paul to the church at Rome. And by the way, they had quite a political structure in his day. In Romans chapter 13, these words are said to God's people and to all people. Chapter 13 of Romans, verse 1, "Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists an authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves." Wow! Now, if we stopped reading there, that means God appointed every form of government across the world and every governmental leader, every authority. Wow, did God appoint Adolf Hitler to lead? Did God appoint Attila the Hun to be the leader? If that's all you read, well, then you'll be ignorant of the rest of the Scriptures. See, I see a lot of people who try to quote the Bible to support their points or not support their points, but they don't read the whole story. I see that's a problem with our culture today too. We don't listen to everybody's whole story very well. Most of us have already chose our sides, and we don't look at another person's perspective. Well, here we go. So here's what happened. In Germany during World War II, a lot of people who called themselves Christians, who believed that Jesus is the way, the truth, and life, they also believed, well, our leader today is Adolf Hitler, and we need to follow his lead. Well, there were a few Christians in those days that stood against Hitler's leadership. And I want to let you know, Christians, there is a time to be politically active. There is a way to be politically active. By the way, this being the 4th of July weekend, truth is very important, and truth expressed in a loving way and a caring way is important. But the truth, you want to have freedom? Jesus said it well when he said, you'll know the truth, and when you know the truth will set you free. Some of you have been, and us have been, fooled. How do you get fooled? We get fooled by people who have already themselves been fooled. The drug pusher who comes to you and says, this is the good stuff. Well, they're already fooled. They live a life of a mess, and they're trying to include you in that journey. Now, that was the drug pusher. How about the pusher of false teachings? How about the pusher of other behaviors? How about the people who tell you, don't worry about the way you live. It's how you are, and it'll make you happy. One of the terrible realities I've seen through my generation, a generation that has had more wealth than any other generation before it, a generation that's had more expressions of freedom than any others, has become still a generation that whines and complains and always wants something else or more. If that sounds like a rabbit trail, let's go back to this. It sounds in these first verses that government, no matter who it is, God put it there. What kind of God would put Adolf Hitler in charge? What kind of God would put these other types of leaders in charge? And you're probably thinking, what kind of God would allow President Trump to be in charge or Biden to be voted in? Whatever our journey is, you have to read the rest of the passage to understand what is meant here. Every soul in verse 1, subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. But now we have to go to verse 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Are all of our rulers in the world good? It's implied in chapter 13 of Romans that government was part of God's structure for men. In fact, you may not know this, but I'm going to tell it to you in a synopsis. There are 3 basic institutions that God has established when He created us. The first institution would be called the institution of marriage. Yes, marriage. For this reason, a man and a woman were created to be able to come together, and from that marriage, families grow. It was a great start. It was a great idea. And by the way, those of you who have diverse ideas, I'm looking at your marriage records. I'm looking at your relationship records. You break up and shake up and fall apart. God's basic idea of first institution of a marriage became concept for how children could be nurtured and loved and grow in a loving relationship. I do want to let you know I've experienced that. Still am. I married my high school sweetheart almost 43 years ago. I would have never she would have never put up with me if I had lived the way I was taught by my culture. First institution was marriage. Off that would be family. His second institution that he absolutely declared was government. You will find it all the way through the Bible. But we just read it here in Romans 13:1. Every soul is subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. The concept of governing and government and leadership, we need it as a culture. We need it as a people who, in order to live together safely and properly, for in every culture there will be those who choose evil. Who's going to stand up against the evil? Are the anarchists in the street? They're already doing evil. Are it the boys in blue and the boys with and the girls with the badges? Or is our police department? Well, they're the best we've got. In fact, that's what we used to call our city's finest. We probably still should. I'd like to thank all of you who put on the uniforms to truly be public servants and to serve and to protect others, especially those who cannot protect themselves. We should be thanking them. We shouldn't let one or a few behaviors, because they're going to be everywhere, ruin it for others. Will you go to a doctor again someday? Will you? Most likely. However, have there been doctors who failed at their profession and been inappropriate and done terrible things as doctors? Absolutely. Yeah, let's not be prejudiced against a group of anybody based upon a small minority. That's a food for thought too, as a citizen. The second institution God established was government. The third institution He established is His church. That's right. Remember the linkage? He established the family when He said, I will build my church. So He's got marriage, which creates family. He's got government, which protects families. And now He's got church, which ultimately is His family. Yeah, I'll build my church. It's not buildings or structures or institutions. The church is simply God's people. Those who come to Him. Those who declare they believe in Him and make Him Lord. Oh, that comes to our current motto. This culture declared at one time, and it was just one generation ago, it's in my generation, our national motto will be, in God we trust. There's a hymn from Hymnals. Probably some of the younger church folks should learn from this too, because a lot of young Christians have been so influenced by their culture, they're changing the truths. And truth doesn't have to change. That's what makes it truth. It's established. You can deny it, you can reject it, but it doesn't change it. The truth is this: when you say, I trust God, it means you obey. The hymn says, trust and obey, for there's no other way. There's no other way to be right with God. You say you trust, then you have to be obeying. Did you know sin? That means to deny God's commands, directions, His instructions, to deny them. Sin is just always an expression of, I don't trust God. I trust myself more. I don't trust God. I trust the rap singers or someone else who's pushing their immoral agendas. The current and coming up election, it's going to happen just less than 150 days away. Like no other time in my life is absolutely an election that, let's not be fooled by the propaganda. Let's not be fooled by the voices in the media or any place else. Let's not be fooled, because they are going to tell you that this coming election is against two personalities. Hate one or hate the other. Whatever their last names are. And so far, the last names on the top of the list are Trump, and the last name is Biden. And they want you to make this a personality attack. It's common. The foolish do that. The foolish fall for it. This coming election is not going to be about two personalities. But what's really at stake, like never before, are the policies, the principles that some group is going to govern by. And there's a group already revealing itself in what they declare about this country. They said, give us what we want, and we'll all be free. It's a foolish declaration. We've been giving people what they want for a long time, and this current generation of people, my generation and younger, you've had every opportunity to choose good. I tell you what happens when what we choose isn't good. We get disappointed. And when we're disappointed, we get down. And when we're down, we get angry. And when we're angry, that bitterness grows into a root, and we just strike out. And then when we do what is wrong, we blame others for it. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of policies and principles that are at stake. Don't vote for a personality. Don't worry about the personality. Look at what the policies, procedures, principles they're going to govern by. Our cities in America have been governed oftentimes by policies and principles. In the state I'm living in now, people have made decisions. And I wonder why they don't see the long-term effects of the decisions they made. People living wrong, hurting others, and it's not going to get better. Until a person says, what I've been doing is wrong, and I'm sorry. The Bible teaches, let us repent. But let me go back, Romans 13. Rulers are not a terror to good works, this is verse 3, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of the authority? Then do what is good, and you will have praise from the authorities. That's the way it used to be. For the authorities are God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, go ahead and be afraid. For he does not bear the sword in vain, this authority. They do not bear the sword in vain, for he is God's minister, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Well, I got to tell you, in America, it used to truly be that way most of the time. There's always been corruption in virtually every human institution. Why? Yeah, you know why. Look in your own heart. Just like mine. We all have the tendency to do wrong. It takes an act of God to help us do right. Therefore, you must be subject not only because of God's wrath, but just because your conscience should know right from wrong. For because of this you pay taxes. For these authorities are God's ministers, attending continually to this very thing. Therefore, render to all their due. Taxes to whom taxes are due, customs to whom customs are due, fear to whom fear, and honor to whom honor. And how dare some of us think, hey, I don't like this current person in an office, so I can call them names, I can shout at them, I can threaten them. I don't like these people who tell me I'm wrong. America, citizen, you who are listening, I hope you do have a great 4th of July weekend. Our motto used to be, from many we become one. Our motto became, just in this generation, In God we trust. What would our motto be today? What is your motto for your journey in life? What will your motto be? Pretty good question. What is your motto? My motto, if I'd stayed on the path I was in me I will trust. What a foolish motto, because actually I am the result of other people who have influenced my life. So if I think I'm trusting myself, I'm just falling. Look how often people in groups, they look alike. And they think, I'm doing my own thing, and yet they look like the mass they're with. Let me warn you about being with the majority. Let me warn you about being with groups. Jesus himself said, his path is narrow, and few find it. He also declared the opposite. And wide is the way to destruction, and many go therein. In closing of this day, I don't think America has a lot to celebrate at this moment in time, when we can see that the generation that is coming into the place of leadership doesn't even know their history accurately and is willing to destroy. But what will they build as monuments? The Bible says this world in general is dangerous. And to love the things of this world more than God, more than trusting God, will lead us on a path that is called the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the pride of life. And simply what that is saying is a person left to being in charge themselves will lust. And in that lusting, they will do wrong. And it will hurt them. And when they're miserable, they will hurt others. Not much peace in that. Good news. If any person will humble themselves, recognize that they're not living right and that their journey they're on will bring death, hurt, injury to themselves and others. If any person will humble themselves and come back to God and repent and say, God, I am sorry, and change their motto. And if their motto would be, in God I trust, well, I guarantee you that starts a change of life. And this God ultimately can only be known in accuracy if you know who Jesus is. Jesus said, for to see him you see the Father, for we are one. That's a direct quote from Jesus. There's a lot of gods in this world. Jesus did not agree with any of them, because eventually they were wrong. They were made by man. They were from man's lusts. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And Jesus said, you will know the truth, and when you do, then you'll discover freedom. Well, my name's Gregory. Happy 4th of July weekend. God bless.